I want to talk to you about the Odyssey because Christopher Nolan's version of it has obviously been a massive hit, but the story itself has been a massive hit for 3,000 years. And buried inside it is what I think is one of the most useful lessons for documentary makers about how stories actually work. It's not about how the Odyssey is told, so much as it's about something that happens inside it. You probably know the sequence. Odysseus is sailing home from the Trojan War, and he has to pass the Sirens, who are a group of women whose singing is so seductive that sailors willingly steer their boats straight onto the rocks to hear more. Odysseus is desperate to hear their song, so he orders his crew to tie him up to the mast and block up their own ears with wax. He gets to hear the song and survive. When I first heard this, I assumed the Sirens were singing some kind of magical incantation. What could possibly be so compelling? But if you actually read what they sang, it's something remarkable. Here it is from the text. Since we know everything the Greeks and Trojans suffered in Troy by God's will, and we know whatever happens anywhere on earth. That's it. That's the song. They weren't casting a spell. They were offering Odysseus the complete story of his life, a perspective on it he could never have, the meaning of it. And that's what stories give us, an objective view, the complete picture of why lives turn out the way they do. And the reason they're so powerful and so necessary is that it's something we can never work out for ourselves because we're on the inside. In our own lives, everything is subjective. In my case, I know what I'm experiencing. That's my perspective. Then there's you, the person I'm talking to, the person I'm interacting with. I can get a sense of you. I can also understand us, see how we're getting on. But what I can never have, and what none of us can have, is the view of me from the outside, the objective observer looking at me, watching, but looking at me as part of them over there, understanding the whole picture of my life. That's why people go to therapy. You lay out everything you think's happening, and then you ask the therapist, who's an objective observer, so what's actually going on? Stories give you that kind of relief, the satisfaction of seeing a complete life play out and the dramatic consequences of living it in a particular way, but safely inside the self-contained structure of a narrative. Now, here's the clever part, and maybe it's one of the reasons it appealed so much to Christopher Nolan, who always loves playing with structure. Odysseus wants to know one thing. Will he get home to his wife and family? And the Sirens are offering him the answer, and he chooses to sail past. He chooses to live his life rather than be told it. And that's exactly why the story continues. If Odysseus gets to understand the whole story of his life there and then the story of the Odyssey is over. But by rejecting it, he keeps going. And we have to keep watching and reading to get the very thing the Sirens were willing to hand him right there. This is what it means for storytellers, because this is what storytellers use every day. They work with that desperate human need to know how things turn out. It's why when you start watching a good documentary at 10 p.m. at night, 5 minutes later it's suddenly midnight and you're still there, or why you can't put a great book down. And for the audience to care how the story turns out, you have to give them a clear, dramatic question. That's a question that switches on that need to know, the one that sets the whole story running. The Sirens weren't singing magic. They were offering the answer to the question that carried Odysseus through his life. And 3,000 years later, that's still what a story has to offer. Will Odysseus get home to his old life and his family? That's the dramatic question of the Odyssey. As soon as he does, we know the story is wrapping up. It's clear, it's simple, and we know what the ending is going to be about. Not precisely what happens when he gets home. It's the promise that that's where all the themes and all the subplots come together. A good dramatic question implies an ending, the moment we're waiting for to see how things turn out. And even the most complex stories have one. In fact, The more complex a story, the more the audience needs to know what they're going to get at the end of it. For documentary filmmakers, finding your dramatic question takes craft. Unlike fiction writers, we can't invent scenes or characters, gods and monsters, to express our ideas. That's a different kind of craft, which is why all those books on screenwriting can be such a frustrating read. They teach you how to invent the thing that answers the question. We have to go and find it. We have to work with reality. We have to look at what it is about the idea that excited us enough to want to make the documentary in the first place. And then we have to identify a dramatic question. Finding that dramatic question is the best way to avoid being overwhelmed by all that good material that reality gives us. Without one, it's why so many documentary filmmakers film and film what's in front of them endlessly and hope it makes sense later. When you know why you're telling this story and where it's headed, or at least have begun to explore that question, then everything that doesn't fit slowly becomes irrelevant. It just falls away. That's the power of a dramatic question. It's a vital tool of the author of a story. It makes the process of making a documentary so much easier. You are sketching out a map that becomes clearer and clearer as you go. That's what I think is the great lesson of the Odyssey. And it's something that as a documentary maker and an author, you should spend a lot of your time thinking about and working on. It's how you can create a story as compelling as any fiction, but always using the truth as your guide.